digital meetup that we organized at DW Academy for our digital media entrepreneurs. These are 16 well-selected digital entrepreneurs from all over the world. And they've been discussing in the past 1.5 years what challenges other innovative media companies face and what can be learned from each other. And our main focus of today, it is the last day of our digital meetup, is how to grow in the crisis. And I'm really glad that one of the most innovative entrepreneurs from Germany is joining us today. At our last meetup in Hamburg, we were lucky getting to know the fabulous David Schraven, who had the idea for Correctiv. And today we get to know Sebastian Esser. He is co-founder for the membership-funded magazine called Crowd Reporter and the membership platform Steady. And he will give a short input of about 15 minutes while giving useful tips how to grow in a healthy way, what has to be considered in terms of viability, and what independent publishers can learn in times of COVID-19. And after his presentation, our pioneers will have the opportunity to discuss with him for another 15 minutes. And now, Sebastian, this is your stage.
Thank you so much, Pauline, for your kind words. And again, nice to meet you all. And the round of introductions gave a very nice impression of how nice everybody is to each other. So I'm sure you have a nice group of people together. So I'll start sharing my screen, if you don't mind. So as Pauline said, I'm responsible for 2 companies. One is called Crowd Reporter that you got to know, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit later, but the other company is Steady. And both companies are working on the same problem, how to fund media, but they're actually quite different. Whereas Crowd Reporter is a cooperative owned by members, Steady is a investor-funded startup that doesn't make money, spends more money than it makes. So talking about sustainability, I don't know, we're on the way there, right? But we're not there, certainly. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Steady first. So basically what it is, it's a platform that allows you to offer memberships to your members. So we take care of all of the management of memberships. There's a lot of magazines, podcasts, newsletters, blogs, and so on our platform that use it as a tool. And the idea behind it is kind of to build something that can work for small-ish publications or even individual writers, podcasters, creators that are, that are not making enough money to support a development team, or are not even interested in that part of running a publication business. So when we learned that this is really difficult the hard way with Crowd Reporter, this is how the idea for Steady came about. If you're interested in the details, because I don't intend to make this a sales pitch, you feel free to contact me later if you think this might be interesting for you. But I don't want to sell you anything today, maybe tomorrow. So membership, what does it mean? It means many things to many people. There's not a standard definition that everybody agrees on. So I'll just tell you what I think it means and how that's interesting for journalists. So consider these 2 dimensions here. One is I'm very passionate about a publication, or I don't really care about the publication or the person behind the publication, or the purpose of that publication. So that's one dimension, right? And the other dimension is when I start paying, do I get something in return? So do I get any privileges as a paying member, or is there nothing that I get? So, and if you ask yourself maybe about your own publication, where on this spectrum you are, then you're probably on the right-hand side, right? So your readers, users feel that you're doing an important job, I hope. But maybe it's not as clear-cut where you are in this other dimension. And I'll just talk briefly about what I think these are. So let's start with the no privileges, no passion area here. The only business model that works here, and this would be something like BuzzFeed or CNN or something, where you just publish a lot of content to a lot of people, and they look for buzz, for entertainment. And I don't mean it in a degrading way, because I like these publications. I like BuzzFeed, I like their style, their stories, but it's not important to me, right? I'm not passionate about the daily news or like entertainment or something. So I won't start paying because I don't get anything that I can't get for free. And also I'm not passionate. So the only way to make money here is with ads. And I'm sure you know that it's very hard for journalism to make money off ads nowadays, because the only institutions that make money with ads nowadays are the big platforms and maybe huge media companies, but not like individual independent publishers like ourselves. So let's consider the next segment, which I would call one-off donations, because it means you don't get anything in return for your money, but people feel that you're doing a very important job, right? So they think it's important that you do the work that you do because you're kind of filling a void, or they have like a political agenda that they want to support or something like that. And the problem here is that these are usually one-off donations. These are, first of all, it's donations. People give you money because they want you to have some money, but why would I do that every month? It's not really a business model. It's just like, it's not something you can rely on as a regular income that you can work with every month. So I'm guessing that at least some of you depend on this kind of money. And I'm not saying it's bad to have, it's just not a business model, right? But maybe let's talk about later about how to turn this in, or to use this to build a business model. And then the up here, no passion, but a lot of privileges. Think about something like Netflix, Spotify, Deezer, or something similar in your countries, where you pay for access to a pool of awesome content, right? At least in Germany, it costs, I think, $10 or something, 10 euros, to get all the music in the whole world on Spotify. And that's 10 euros. So it's not expensive, right? Or Netflix spends like billions of dollars every year on new video production, and I get that for, again, $10. So that's where the problem is. If you as an independent publisher want to be in context with these kind of content platforms, your product is just not great enough. Asking for 10 euros or whatever it is in your currencies, how good can journalism be, and how much can you produce to be able to compete in this market? And this is what we would call subscriptions. People don't really care where they get it from. They just want it to be good because they need it in their life. So it's a very transactional relationship there. It's not really about the purpose. It's about the content that you kind of buy into, but there's no real relationships. And now finally, the membership segment combines passion. People feel like what you do is important. They're also passionate about that. They like you as a person, they like your mission, they like your style, your language, your political views, whatever. But they also get something in return. For example, they can read content behind a paywall, but not necessarily that. That just needs to be something exclusive so that I don't feel like I'm being, taken advantage of. To keep paying every month or every year, I need something for myself. So my life needs to become better to create this willingness to pay. So that's why membership works for publications your size. Without knowing too much about you, I think it's fair to say that. Just put some examples on here to make my point, because what's interesting is that even the big publishers have started to move from here to over here. So if you look at the Washington Post, you know, democracy dies in darkness. That's very much about its purpose. It's not selling a newspaper, if you get my point. The Guardian, again, used to be a donation-based a model, then now moving to membership. But the purpose of the newspaper is really important, but you also get something in return, even though it's not a paywall. And even some of these down here are trying to make membership work, like BuzzFeed does, like TechCrunch, Quartz, Mike doesn't even exist anymore. So everything is moving in that direction, is what I'm saying. As mentioned, I'm a co-founder of this publication, Culture Reporter. I think you've met my colleague Rico, and this is how our study also came about. Just very quickly, because I'm taking longer than I was hoping. I want to talk about how Steady operates as a media startup. So basically, we spend more money than we make, and we fill the hole with investor money. And then we spend that money. So this is our earnings, right? So we make money every day, hopefully, more money every day. And we need to get to this point where we spend only as much as we make. And all of this money needs to come from someplace else. In our case, it's investors. Maybe one of your publications are also, could also work with investors, but mostly media is not really a great model for that, because investors want, scale and want these huge profit fantasies and stuff. But then again, you can work with institutional donors, right? So wherever this money may come from to help you fill this gap is good, but then you need to make this gap smaller to actually make it sustainable. You know what I mean? So we call it the cliff. So whenever the money runs out, you're just about to crash. So then you kind of need to fill up the money, but that only really makes sense in the long run, and if you are able to turn it into something sustainable, right? So hopefully after like the second or third bucket of money, again from investors, or in your case mostly from donors, hopefully you'll hit this spot, which is when you are a sustainable media business, because you break even, right? And what I've just experienced a lot, that yes, media are able to find partners that provide them with some money, but then this green area here doesn't grow. So you kind of are stuck in this cycle of always needing the next round of money, because you kind of have to invest it into the area that the donor wants you to write about or something, but you don't really invest it where it may turn into a working business model, which in my opinion at the moment would be membership. So if that funding round doesn't happen, or the donor doesn't materialize, then you're in trouble. And so Steady is in the same position. If we run out of money because we don't find investors, we're not here yet. We hope to be there sometime soon, but it's not the case. But at least we can see that it's getting there. And just because we have these numbers, do we find more investors? And I think that's quite similar in the donations, institutional donations space, where kind of donors want to see that they help building something sustainable, whereas mostly what they see is black holes that they need to shove more money in, right? But if you can at least show that there is some growth in your numbers, that's a great way to approach a potential donor. So just quickly about Crowd Reporter, as I said, Rico told you about it, but about our business model. So that's basically the number of members that we have, and as you can see, we grow not very, the growth rate is not steep, but at least it's there, and that's the important thing. So this is how this materializes in terms of revenue, and these strange spikes here is as kind of institutional donor money, right? So what happens is we spend what is in the reds here, and it's more than we make, because we can invest this kind of money in our growth. Okay, so let me stop there, because I think I've made my point, and maybe we can, start a conversation of how this may work. When you come up with money, how can you invest it in a way that leads to sustainability in the long run?
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for this presentation. And now I would like to invite the plenary to ask questions. And I'm starting with the first question. When I'm right, you started the study in 2017. So could you share your 3 key learnings with us since then?
Oh man, so I'm gonna have to come up with that from the top of my head. So first important thing, but I think everybody did that, get started, just start. Most people just never start, but as we can see, you all did that. And the next thing would probably be, just change drastically whenever you feel it's not working. Just be willing to question everything, and then just try something else. And that's maybe the third thing that sounds a little bit like startup glibberish, but I learned that it's really true. Just talk to your users as often and as much as you can, and listen really carefully, and stop doing what they don't want you to do. If nobody's interested, but you think it's important, maybe it's not important. Just trust your users, and that's something that, at least for me, has worked well, not only in finding a way to success, but also just to be able to focus on what actually works, because that may only be 10% of what you do, but these are the important 10%. And even though you've learned it a different way, maybe you can leave out the 90%, and that frees up all that energy and money and space for what's really important to your users. I sound like my own grandfather, but you asked, so I pretend to know it all.
Okay, a question by Tijan from Senegal. Tijan, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well, Sebastian.
Yes, yep. Hi Tijan, nice to meet you.
My question is a practical one. How do you work with the organizations that you partner with, the publications you with? I think at some point there's somebody here in my team who tried to approach you, and that's why I'm asking how it works. And yeah, where is the members, the crowd you are working with? Are they in Europe? Are they in the US? Where are they? I mean, how does it work?
Sure, I'm glad you asked. So most of our publishers, as we call them, so these would be the customers, are in Europe and actually in Germany, but we're trying to internationalize. That's my job at the moment. We do have some customers in South Africa. We have several currencies. So South African Rand, for example, is already available. We have different languages: Spanish, French, Italian, but we're ready to introduce more languages if need be. And the way we would work with you is, first of all, if you don't want to, you don't have to work with us at all. You can just set up a study project in 10 minutes and then start offering memberships right away. That's the idea, to make it very easy and cheap to get started. And but if you need some help or would like some consulting or support, just reach out to us. Maybe just write me an email, and then we can have a call and we can try to figure out 3 things. Who is it that would give you money? What would they give you money for? And how much money is realistic given the size of your community? And their income situation, of course, in some countries is easier than in others. That's a given. But maybe, maybe even if in your country people are not used to paying online, are not, well off enough or something, there are still ways to make it work, for example, with the expat community, or, offering B2B, business to business offerings or something like that. So if you're interested in kind of brainstorming, then just reach out.
And to make it concrete, Sebastian, so right now you have more than 1,000 publishers, right?
Yep.
And like 85% of them are in Germany, and you are reaching out right now to Europe, when I'm right?
Yeah, because in Germany it grows by itself. Steady grows by itself because people using Steady get to know Steady, and then they start their own projects. So we don't really need to do a lot of like sales activity. But of course, in other countries where it's not an established concept and the brand is not known and stuff, we need to we need to work on getting a foot in the door and kind of building this this machine in the different market and different language spaces that will then kind of take off.
But are you planning to expand to Africa, as Tijan asked, like to Africa or Latin America or Asia, or is your focus for 2020 or 2021 Europe?
Our focus is Europe, because also we're in a competition situation, right? So we need to be careful not to be eaten by competitors. Having said that, there's nothing that prevents you from using Steady on a different continent or in a country. As I said, we do have different languages. So if you're happy with using US dollars in Latin America, as far as I can tell, that's not a huge problem for most users in Latin America. There is a Spanish version. So yeah, there's no reason not to use Steady in Latin America. Again, I told you there's a project in South Africa that's doing really well. It really depends on the situation on the ground. Mostly our problems with publications in Africa is that the potential users are not used to paying on the internet or have no credit cards, or the currency situation is difficult. But again, then the question is, maybe some other people pay, and you build a model where it's not about only being able to pay when you to read when you pay, or stuff like that. So good thing about membership is it's not as clear cut as subscriptions. It can work for all different instances, because it's really about the purpose and not so much about the access to content.
Okay, Margaret wanted to ask a question. She's also from Africa, from Kenya. She's working as program manager for the Elephant. Please, Margaret, go ahead.
Yeah.
I've heard of the Elephant. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Sebastian, for your presentation. I would like you to speak a little more about the privileges and how best to package them, maybe giving some examples. Because I understand the passion bit, but maybe just expound on the privileges. Thank you.
Yeah, so the easiest and most straightforward way is to introduce a paywall, and that's part of the Steady product. So basically, you just define a place somewhere in your article where people that don't pay and are not logged in see a paywall instead of the content. So that's kind of a no-brainer. There's something similar for audio content, so that you can offer extra content. So for example, if you produce podcasts only for paying members, they get their own personal feed, and once they stop paying, this feed gets switched off. Also, what you can do is to invite paying members to community features like a Facebook page, a WhatsApp group, a Telegram group, even live events can be a privilege. What doesn't work really well is kind of what you know from crowdfunding campaigns, like I'll send you a cup and a t-shirt and a tote bag and whatever. People don't want that. It's actually it has negative effects in many cases, because since it's about your purpose, people don't want you to spend your money on crack, not crack, and also not crack, on crap. I was gonna say. So But I mean, the easiest way to find that out is to ask. So to send out a survey and to let people kind of give them a number of choices. And then you probably find out from my experience that people are looking for something else that you think they are looking for. First of all, on the rewards level, but also on this value proposition thing. So for example, for one publication, the value proposition might be, read this magazine because then you understand the situation in this policy field better, or you become an expert in this conflict. In other cases, the users say, well, we just want you to stay around. You don't have to give me anything. We just want to make sure that we provide you with enough money to be able to continue your important work. And then again, other people are saying, well, I'm looking for a community. I want to meet like-minded people. And whichever is the case is a matter of measuring. So finding out who are the people who would be interested in paying and what are they asking for. And then, getting into a conversation with like 3 or 4 of them. But it's really a matter of research, and we can help you or guide you a little bit in that regard.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another 7 minutes for discussion, so feel free to ask Sebastian anything you would like to ask. Tamara would like to ask you something. She's from Arish from Jordan.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. I have a question. We are a donor-driven organization, and our donors are asking us to have our own income generation because they've been funding us for a while. However, we are not a publishing platform. We train and we produce investigation. However, we work with underprivileged countries, so they are not in a position to pay for the free investigations that we produce or publish. So my question is, what do we do about it? I mean, we have another angle on subscription for our annual forum, but it barely covers 10% of our annual budget. So we're in a little bit of a predicament where to start from and what's our entry point. Question number 1. Question number 2, very quickly, do you plan to expand to the Middle East? And question number 3, what is the range where you charge, in terms of cost?
Yeah, okay, let's start with that because it's easy. So there's no initial costs or any cost. We just take a 10% share of any revenue that you make, but no additional costs. Yeah, and we also add the payment cost. So, if somebody pays with PayPal, then we charge this, but it's not, we don't make any money of it. But so it's 10% plus the payment cost, which is really something like 30 cents, 0 cents. So that's very nice because our incentives are aligned, right? We want you to make more money because then we make 10% of that. So that's question number 1. I mean, in terms of expanding to the Middle East, we kind of already are available in the Middle East, right? So it's more about people starting to use us. We're not looking into introducing Middle East currencies, but I guess in the Arab world, people feel comfortable with using either US dollars or maybe even euros or something, so that may not be the problem. And the tricky one is your first question. And I've had, as you know, there's a lot of Syrian journalists in Berlin in exile, so we try to work with them, or they try to work with us, and they run into the same problems that you mentioned. And I mean, there's 2 elements to this. One is maybe it just doesn't work. Maybe you're not in a situation where you can pull that off. On the other hand, maybe it does, and nobody has tried. And I keep encouraging these Arab colleagues that I talk to give it a try. They tell me, well, everyone expects media in the Arab countries to be corrupt, so we just need to accept that, and whoever pays dictates what is being written and stuff. Yeah, but maybe if you're very transparent where the money comes from, and if you tell them, well, we can only work as independently as we do if the money comes not from a big oil giant or a government or something. I think I mean, I'd keep telling them, you know, how many Arab-speaking users are there, and don't you think there would be like 4,000 or 5,000 of them who would, you know, feel passionate enough about the kind of stories that you do to start funding them if you make it really easy, if the proposition is on point, you know, let's find out. And also, as I said before, there's a lot of expats from the Arab world in Europe, in the US. So it may be easier for them to come up with the money, but also have the means in terms of technology. So the thing is, you don't need tens of thousands of these people. You maybe need 1,000, and then that's enough. At Krautreporter, we have now 14,000 members that fund a team of 15 to 20 people, depending on how you define a team member. And then it's very sustainable, it's very independent, and it keeps growing. It's not a rapid growth, as you saw, but that's how journalism is, right? We're like farmers. We go to the market every day, bring new stories, then talk to people, build relationships, and we're not technology startups. But that's great about it. It's a very honest daily work, lots of relationship building and communication. And if you give these people the opportunity to pay instead of forcing them to pay, it can work great. But then again, maybe you're right, it just doesn't work. And I don't pretend this is like a magic bullet. And it's maybe not going to be like, you know, the provider of 100% of your funding. But even if it's 10%, it just helps you to convince donors that they're investing in something that is working on becoming sustainable, maybe enough.
We are coming slowly to an end. I would like to invite the pioneers to ask one last question before we are finishing the session. Is there any question? David from Ojo Público from Peru, and Laura from Buenos Aires. Okay, let's make it short. David, short question, short answer, and Laura also. Go ahead.
Hi, Sebastian. I wanted to know if do you recommend for starting a membership program to make a financial projection and on what's going to be your incomes in for example, the first year? What do you need to invest to organize the program, and how should it be planned based on, for example, for covering, you need to consider your costs over your whole operation or just for the membership program? I don't know if I am clear in the question.
Yeah, I mean, I will post a link to a template that you can use to kind of project how this might work. Honestly, it doesn't cost a lot to start a membership program. It's more about being very consistent and communicating and finding out what to communicate and then just including it into everything. But you don't, for example, you don't need a team member. You don't need to hire somebody who works on this every day. It's not necessary in my experience. It just needs to become part of your daily operation, and the communication and the proposition and the purpose and all that. That's the real work that you have to do once. But in terms of, you know, how much money do we need? It pays off to be very, very transparent, to just publish the money that you need, the money that you make, and where it comes from, and why you want that to change, and what you would be able to do if that would change. Because being transparent just works wonders in creating trust and creating a willingness to become a part of something. If they suspect that you have all the money in the world and you secretly drive Porsches because you get money from, I don't know, European foundations or whatever, well, if it's true, congratulations, but it's probably not true, but people don't know that. So if you just tell them, that goes a long way in creating willingness to pay, because they see that, you know, there's clearly a gap. You're not living a luxurious life, so they become more willing to join your team and to kind of voice their support by giving you a small amount of money on a monthly basis. But again, I'll post this template, and I hope it's self-explanatory. If not, feel free to contact me about it in the chat in a minute.
Okay, and the last question by Laura Zammer from Argentina.
Yeah, really quickly, what's your biggest failure during this process?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because the danger here is to sound like a superhero, and I'm clearly not, and I don't want to pretend I am. My biggest failure, I mean,
Just professional one.
Huh? No, I kind of stumbled into the whole crowdreporter thing, which was a crowdfunding. So I just said, well, I want this to work, so let's just fucking do it. Sorry. And maybe like 6 months of planning and sitting down and thinking a little more wouldn't have hurt. So I don't want to, relive the stress of these months. But then that's the way you learn, right? I didn't know better, and maybe it wouldn't have worked. And this worked, so I don't care. That's maybe, again, an important thing, to just make mistakes and allow you to make them. Who cares? I mean, you have to kind of eat the soup that you cooked yourself. So it's on you if you decide to make mistakes, and why not? I don't think it's a problem. It's stressful, but it's better to make a lot of mistakes and just make them quickly, and everything is nothing is ever perfect, right? So everything is kind of a mistake, and just acting means making mistakes. But now again, I'm sounding like a startup asshole, so I'll shut up.
Or to make it simple and short, fail forward, right? Like the mantra from the Silicon Valley that can be used pretty often. Thank you very much for the interesting discussion. Thank you, Sebastian, for your interesting insights. Unfortunately, our 15 minutes of discussion are over. So I would also like to thank our digital media pioneers for your participation, not only today, but in the whole 4 days of our digital meetup, what takes a huge amount of time, I know, and is a big commitment. But we are super busy, but at the same time, we are discussing really important topics for all of you, for all media entrepreneurs over the globe. So thank you very much also for the people who watched us on YouTube.